should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like, you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I've exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like, you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on.
So
and that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you, as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and... I'm just trying to work that out. I mean...
Ha, gotcha.
You have got me.
I don't recognize another person's right to dictate the words I use, especially when they're made up. The gender pay gap is not due to discrimination. It's due to differences in personality and choice. Violent protests in favor of social justice are often just excuses for power-hungry people to destroy. Masculinity is under attack, and society is suffering because of it. Feminists don't complain about female dominance in nursing or education. The best way to help poor people isn't to take money from the rich. It's to teach them how to be competent. If you tell young men they're useless long enough, they'll eventually believe it, and that's a disaster for everyone. Schools should focus on teaching children facts, not ideology. Free speech is more important than your feelings. The idea that humans should strive for equality of outcome is not only wrong, it's insane. The West does not have a problem with toxic masculinity. It has a crisis of absent masculinity. Most people who claim to be oppressed are actually just resentful and incompetent. You can't be happy if your life is meaningless, and most people's lives are meaningless. Success is determined by competence, not racial identity. If white privilege were real, why do Asian Americans outperform whites in nearly every metric? Teaching white kids they're oppressors based on skin color is morally wrong. Boys are suffering in the modern world because we have been fed this narrative that masculinity itself is toxic. If you can't understand why someone is doing something, look at the consequences of their actions, whatever they might be, and then infer the motivations from their consequences. A harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control. The truth is something that burns. It burns off dead wood. And people don't like having their dead wood burnt off often because they're 95% dead wood. If you think tough men are dangerous, wait until you see what weak men are capable of. In order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. You don't get to choose not to pay a price. You only get to choose which price you pay. Ideologies are substitutes for true knowledge, and ideologues are always dangerous when they come to power, because a simple-minded, I-know-it-all approach is no match for the complexity of existence. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. The way that you make people resilient is by voluntarily exposing them to things that they are afraid of and that make them uncomfortable. You need to have a sophisticated rationale for your beliefs, because your capacity to articulate and defend them in the face of opposition strengthens your character. Resentful people want to punish those who seem unjustly superior. Resentment is a great source of revolution, but it's also a great source of tyranny. You should be afraid of taking risks and pursuing something meaningful, but you should be more afraid of staying where you are if it's making you miserable. You don't rise to the top because of the tyranny of the patriarchy. You rise to the top because people see that they can rely on you. The world is a brutal place, and if you don't take responsibility for yourself, you'll be left behind. Marriage is not just about happiness. It's about the ability to grow with someone, to endure suffering together, and to build a life that is greater than your individual selves. Weak and resentful people want to tear down those who strive for greatness rather than lifting themselves up.